Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression video on a new Guerlain from 2024, and it's actually in the new L'Art and Le Métier line. Well, not in the new L'Art and Le Métier line, but a new addition to the L'Art and Le Métier line, and this is called Patchouli Paris. And this is a very generous decant sent by one of you, my perfume god people. I believe she wants to remain anonymous, so we will just say thank you to anyone who's ever sent me anything. It would be impossible to do these type of videos without your generosity, so thank you, my friend. So before we get into that, though, we are going to do a couple boxes that have been sitting on my desk now for a couple days. This one comes all the way from England, and let me see what this is. This is a fragrance called Hunayn, maybe? Sorry if I butchered that, but let me open it up. So there's one goes. Okay, I'm gonna have to dive into these later. Silk Dunes, Abi Roya. So that's kind of the packaging. Cool little packaging. They sit in there in this little green felt thing in here. So yeah, the brand is Hunayn, Hunayn. So probably be hearing about these on the channel very soon. Jardin de Musc by Hunayn. So many houses that I would like to discuss. So thank you to another one of my perfume god people who sent this my way. How do I get this back in with this in there? Like this? Let's see. Okay, good enough for government work. So that is one of the boxes, and the other box I'm even more excited about because I think I know what this is. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I have a feeling I know what this is. So let me cut this bad boy open, and let's see if it is what I think it is. I have been waiting to potentially smell these for a long time. I've had a lot of, well, not a long time, but because they just came out, I think. But I had a lot of people asking me if I was going to talk about it, and let's see if this is what I think it is. It is what I think it is. Okay, fascinating. I can't wait. So this is the new Areej Dore collection, which, here, let me get them pulled up real quick. Areej Dore. So there were three from they call it the Arabian Heritage Collection, and one of them is called Al Oud, which is probably the one I'm most excited about. And let me see if I can pull up some info on them really quick here. So Al Oud was, and actually it's still available on the website. Crazy. It's celebrates the highest levels of love for oud in Arabian tradition. It combines the most beloved types of natural oud in a bold and harmonious fashion. Kinam oud resin in the top with a touch of bergamot. Heart of aged Cambodian oud from Kokong. Patchouli natural kumarin. And then a base of Indian oud from Assam. And then we have Al Sandal, which is $185 for 35 ml, the cheapest of the three. And Al Sandal is Arabian tradition is known for the highest levels of hospitality. If you watched my interview with Russian Adam, he talks about kind of the generosity of the Arabic people to him throughout his life and career. Excuse me. An easygoing nature, soothing, relaxing, and meditative scent of natural sandalwood perfectly complements those noble qualities. Top of saffron, absolute, made by Russian Adam. Heart of Indian sandalwood oil, distilled in copper, and then natural kumarin, base of Indian sandalwood CO2 extract. And then finally we have Al Ambar. I think all three of these are still available, which is crazy. You don't usually see his fragrances last very long, but these are still available to purchase. This is $295 for 35 ml. Al Ambar is natural ambergris is treasured and highly respected in Arabian tradition. Resinous, complex, bold, and animalic. This composition highlights all the delicious nuances of amber. Ambergris resinoid in the top, a Papanax, orris, natural vanillin, and oak moss, and then a base of ambergris accord. So I'm very excited to try this. My favorite brand right now. I would say the brand I most look forward to these kind of releases. So thank you for sending these along to me, Adam. And you notice he doesn't send me full bottles. He sends me samples so that there is no sort of, let's say, conflict of interest. Okay. So these are more than enough for me to get my nose on it. So thank you, Adam. Very, very generous of you, my friend. Okay, so that will be coming up very soon. And actually, I have a very special surprise for 11,000 subscribers. I've been working on a ranked Areej Dore video. So I'm thinking about maybe doing like a top 20, not doing all of them. Maybe I'll come back one day and do every single Areej I've ever reviewed on the channel. And I think I've reviewed like north of 40 Areej Dores on the channel. And so I'm thinking about doing a top 20 celebration video for my 11,000 subscriber celebration video, which we are right there. We'll probably hit it today or tomorrow, depending on how many people subscribe. But anyways, so that's what's coming down the pike. So let's go back to Guerlain and let's talk about Patchouli Paris, okay? So Delphine Jelk is the perfumer. She's been the new perfumer for all of the Guerlain, well, not all of them, but a lot of the Guerlains lately, especially from the L'Art and La Matière line. And Guerlain, if you know me and you know my history, is probably one of my favorite French houses going back in the day. And of course, this talks about Parisian culture with Patchouli Paris and all that stuff. And so you go back to the old days of Mitsuko and Shalimar and Le Bleu. I love vintage Guerlain fragrances. I love the heart and soul and everything that goes with it. Nowadays, when a new release like this comes out, I almost cringe a little bit because I'm kind of like, the steam engine of commercialism, of consumerism goes on and on and on, and I'm always wondering what they're going to put out. So obviously this has patchouli in the name. It would be very strange if this was not a patchouli fragrance. So at least they didn't get that wrong. They got that right. This is a patchouli fragrance. So it does exactly what it says on the tin, and it kind of gives you this dark green, almost musky. Patchouli can sometimes have this musky smell, but I think there's also musk in the base of this. So you get this musky style patchouli, if you will. Now, a couple of things around the patchouli will jump out to you right away. One is the aldehydes, which kind of give this complement, this almost apparition of like rising from the ground. Patchouli, obviously, when you see and think about patchouli, at least for me, you think about the ground, you think about the wet earth and the soil and all of that stuff, right? And when you think about aldehydes, what do you think about? Well, for me, it's the sky. It's this airy feeling, this feeling of openness. You think about one airplane flying in like this big giant blue sky of emptiness. And so what Delphine Jelk has done is she's sort of used the two in like a contrasting way, in a counterbalancing way, if you will, okay? And it makes the earthy, wet patchouli, sorry, I got something in my eye, sort of makes the earthy, wet patchouli seem to like rise from the ground, if you will, right? Straight to your nose. Like the aldehydes like bring the patchouli from the ground straight to your nose. The other thing that caught my attention in this, and again, I've only worn this as my scent of the day once today. I did get a chance to wear it to bed yesterday for an hour or so before I passed out. It doesn't seem like there's very much change to this anyways. I'm not really worried about missing something in the late 8-9 hour dry down or anything like that. But do keep in mind, this is an early impression video, but to my nose, what caught my attention was the aldehydes in the top. Of course, the patchouli is the main star of the show. And then there's this kind of floral swirl around the patchouli. So there's definitely something going on that almost gives this like floral like softness, and I think that could come from the iris. I think the iris plays a part in here. There's a little bit of this papery iris kind of hanging out in the background. That could be one part of it, but I think Guerlain is playing a little bit coy with the note listing and leaving some of the floral notes out that make up this floral bouquet that seems to kind of swirl in the background, behind the patchouli. You'll smell it dancing in the background. Now, there are some clues if you pay close attention to things like the advertising, which I've learned over my career of kind of doing these YouTube videos, which were coming up on 3 years of me on YouTube. December, I forget, sometime in the middle of December, but it's coming up very soon in about a month or so. So over these 3 years, 2 years and 11 months or so officially, I've learned never to disregard the copy and the advertising that the brands put out, because sometimes there's some really good clues as to what is in the fragrance or how they develop. And if you go to Parfumo, and click on the very first picture, or just go to Guerlain and pull up Patchouli Paris, and you'll see the very first photograph that they have of this. It's almost like their flagship photo is this rose, and the rose almost looks like it's unfurling or it's opening up, right? And inside of it, right inside of the rose flower unfurling, is this bottle of Patchouli Paris. It's almost like the rose is handing it to you, like it's presenting it to you. And there's a lot of imagery of like, it almost looks like bleached red, like red covers the whole sort of image of the picture that you're seeing. So it almost looks like a red filter has been put on the picture. And so obviously rose and red are playing a bigger part of this than the note listing mentions, because there actually is no rose listed. There's aldehydes in the top, there's patchouli and iris in the heart, there's musk, ambergris, and vanilla in the base, and that's pretty much it. And so I think rose and iris play a bigger role in the scent than discussed. Still a background role, but I think it's more important to sort of understanding the whole picture of this. Now, here is something most people don't realize about patchouli, and that is technically patchouli is classified in the same scientific family by the folks who are much smarter than me as something like mint, okay? And so when you think of mint, you probably think of things like freshness, this green, almost like energetic, put a zing in your step, a pep in your step. Mint gives it that zing, that energetic, almost youthful, like exuberance, okay? But when you think of patchouli, you almost think of the opposite. Even though they're in the same scientific family, they sort of do completely different things. That you think of something that's earthy and spicy, and the word that comes to mind when I smell a really well done patchouli like this is raw. This is a raw, unfiltered type fragrance. And although there is something that at least keeps my nose guessing on going back and forth between the aspects of the family tree, like sometimes I smell this and I think, okay, you're getting the deeper herbal, greener aspects of patchouli. It's almost like your nose is like taking a magnifying glass and zooming in on those aspects of the patchouli. And then some of the stranger parts, like that ghostly, minty freshness hanging out in the background, it almost feels like they're way in the distance, like you're seeing it from a portrait mode. And the this strange sort of exuberant minty freshness is way, way in the background. But the patchouli notes, when you're smelling it, are zoomed in, or you're taking your camera phone and just zooming the picture in, right? Those are the contrasts, the differences. And I mentioned size earlier when mentioning aldehydes. One thing that I really like about the way Delphine Jelk built this fragrance is there seems to be these, feelings of size. There seem to be small objects you're smelling, and there seem to be very, very large objects. And that's not an easy thing to do. So bravo to her on that. So what is so interesting about this fragrance for me is one of my favorite parts of patchouli starts to come out from this instantly, and that's this very chocolate cake-like smell. Patchouli can sometimes give off this chocolate cake, and it's very rich and thick, and I would say decadent comes to mind, okay? And it does have a little bit of this throwback to patchouli from the past. Patchouli from the 70s, when it was really, really popular, can come across as very scratchy. I would almost describe it as like itchy, It's not soft. It's very, very, it can be harsh on the nose. And I actually like that harshness. I like the contrast. I like the harshness. But think of things like, Givenchy Gentleman from the past, these type of all-star patchouli fragrances. Think of Giorgio Beverly Hills, for men from the 80s. So now you have the 70s, you have the 80s. And just imagine these old school, or even, one that comes to mind is Kritzia's Moods Uomo, which it's under lock and key. I don't have it to show you here, but just think about how the patchouli and those type of fragrances just has this, it just gives zero fucks, okay? The patchouli gives zero fucks, and it's going to be its scratchy, itchy self, and you get some of that surrounded by this aura of notes that I think Guerlain and Delphine Jelk were probably thinking make it classy enough to represent the city of Paris, while also kind of showing that dirty underbelly, that furry, musky underbelly, right? So I mentioned the iris and the rose. I mentioned the aldehydes, like lifting the patchouli up to your nose. And of course, you have that Guerlain base in here, which is made up of the vanillic tonka bean-like aspects in the base. So here's the thing. As soon as I smelled this fragrance, I knew I would like it because instantly my mind went to one of my favorite patchouli fragrances in the niche world anyways, and that is Javoy's Psychedelic. So, one of these days I'll do a full review of Psychedelic, but it's going to be pretty close to what I'm saying about this anyways. But if you like that darker, herbal, chocolate cakey style patchouli, the patchouli in here almost feels like batter, right? If you can imagine like waffle batter or like pancake batter or, you know, something like that. Imagine homemade pancake batter. My mom used to make homemade pancakes, which I'm way too lazy to do. I use the instant pancake mix, but she would make it homemade. And just think about that sort of pancake batter, like sort of consistency, okay? And it's interesting because if I was going to spend my hard-earned money on a new patchouli, a straight up patchouli fragrance, out and out patchouli. I reviewed a fragrance on the channel from the House of Parfum and Aroma called Patchouli. You can go check that review out if you would like, but that patchouli is much more resinous and much more dusty. Whereas in Patchouli Paris, the patchouli to my nose here comes across as having that batter-like consistency, and that is exactly what you get in Psychedelic, okay? You get that batter like chocolate cakey style patchouli. And the fragrance, yeah, I mean, the fragrance doesn't transition very much. It wobbles a little bit here and there, but that's pretty much it. I think the main differences between these two, to me, something like Psychedelic, which is an all-star patchouli as far as I'm concerned, a reference patchouli, especially in the modern niche world. I mean, obviously, Givenchy Gentleman. I did a top 22 patchouli fragrances on the channel. It was a live video I did at the end of 2022, like to celebrate the closing of the year 2022. I did a top 22 patchouli fragrances, so you can go check that out, and I ranked them. So even though this Patchouli Paris fragrance doesn't transition very much, it wobbles a little bit here and there, so you may get a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, a little bit more of the florals, but separating it from something like Psychedelic is the florals. The way that the florals interplay, a little bit of that Guerlain vanillic aspect in the base. Here it can come across as maybe just a little bit more ambery, whereas something like Parfum and Aroma's Patchouli can come across a little bit more resinous and a little bit more dusty and almost a little bit more incensey from memory. I would have to revisit it. But I mean, these are some out and out niche patchoulis that we're mentioning, and the comparisons you notice are very, very small. Like I say, there aren't these huge arcs of transitions. It's not like it starts here and it ends over here. It doesn't get in the car and drive far away. No, this stays very, very close. It wobbles just a little bit. And so I knew I liked the fragrance because obviously it reminded me of something in my collection that I own and love, right? Psychedelic. Now, that is a pro, but it is also a con. It's also a downside because, you know, you have to keep in mind a couple things. This is 2024 we're talking about. This is supposed to represent the mood of the city of Paris during the 2024 Olympics. And on top of that, gift to the city marketing line, which should be enough to make you want to make some badass fragrance right there. I mean, you're almost like giving a prize to the city of Paris, an honorary fragrance. They also put this in the L'Art and Le Métier lineup, which is their most expensive lineup. And for me, this is the line where I would expect to smell the most innovative, the most unique creations. And if you probably know exactly where I'm going with this, but this is a line where you would expect to smell something that you've never smelled before, something that is worth $395 for 100 mil. And this just smells like a standard patchouli fragrance. Now, again, to be fair, I'm putting this up there with the best niche patchoulis. You know, I'm comparing it to Parfum and Aroma's patchouli and Psychedelic and all that stuff. But a well-done patchouli fragrance, it is. Yes, it is that. But nothing, my instincts, like if I was the creative director of Guerlain and you put this in front of me and you said, we want to put this in L'Art and Le Métier line, red flags would start to pop up in my head, you know? Warning bells would start to come up because I would start to say things like, does it belong there? What makes this fragrance special enough to belong in the L'Art and Le Métier line? Yes, it is a well-done patchouli lineup, but does it do anything revolutionary? You know, when people are paying this kind of money, they expect to be blown away. They expect to smell art in a bottle, my opinion, okay? I expect to be blown away. I should use the word me. I expect to be blown away. So when you have a $395 patchouli fragrance that reminds me of a Javoy from 2011, and I've said this before, I'm torn because on one hand, I like the fragrance. If I didn't own Psychedelic, I could totally see myself going for Patchouli Paris. I could see myself going for something like this. But then on the other hand, you know, I was thinking about some of my patchouli purchases over the years, and this popped up in my head. This is Patchouli Antique, okay? And I think this is an older bottle presentation. I don't know if you can still buy this or not, but I got this for like $30 within the last 5 years or so. 5 to 6 years I bought this. $30, okay? And this is an amazing patchouli. I would say I get just as much joy and pleasure out of wearing something like this or Psychedelic as I would something like Patchouli Paris, okay? So again, $30, $395. So I don't know if the price is right here. You know, do you get that much more joy and benefit out of wearing the Guerlain? I mean, you can say you're wearing a Guerlain. Most people may not know the house of Les Nereides. But the more I thought about it, the more it made me think value for money here is low. For like someone who's a collector and maybe like a value collector, because if memory serves, I think I got this bottle for like $150, new, brand new, the bottle of Psychedelic. So $395 is a lot. I think it's a little out of place. I don't think it belongs in the L'Art and La Matière collection, and I think it's overpriced. Now, but as I said, before the Guerlain lovers jump down my throat, there are some ingredients that will be made over and over again into fragrances. That's just the way it goes. Like if a new house releases 6 fragrances, a lot of times one of them will be a rose, one of them will be a patchouli. You know, rose fragrances are made over and over and over and over and over. And the whole point is, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it different? How do you make it unique? And you know, patchouli is another one where once you put so much patchouli into a fragrance, depending on the patchouli, and something like 90% of the world's patchouli comes from Indonesia, okay? So a lot of times they're all using Indonesian patchouli, and there's different types and all this stuff. How it's distilled, I guess, can matter, and all this stuff, right? Is it aged? I reviewed a fragrance from the house of Aton that used an aged patchouli. You can check that out. Go back through my old videos if you're new to the channel. I've got over 1,000 videos on the channel. There's a ton of content for somebody. If you've just discovered me, there's a ton of old stuff for you to go through. But, you know, the differences for me are very, very slim. You know, the perceived benefits of one patchouli like this over the other is very, very slim. And the perceived amounts are so small, I would probably just stick to what I have, okay? Now, I'm very, very lucky and blessed to have what I have, but because I already have things like Patchouli Antique, Psychedelic, there would be no reason for me to go for a bottle of Patchouli Paris. So this would be kind of a pass for me. Now, that's just my 2 cents. Like I said, I'm a patchouli lover. Patchouli's an easy sell for me. On the other hand, objectively, I don't think this does anything special. And the other thing is I don't really understand how this represents Paris. I would think more of like a challenging old school Chypre would more represent the city of Paris, but alas, to each their own. So let me read you the blurb, and then we'll kind of wrap up this little bad boy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Patchouli Paris. But here's what Guerlain says: a sensual and woody interpretation of patchouli. Patchouli Paris reveals a facet of the capital as yet unexplored by Guerlain. The dazzle and magnetism of Parisian nights. Disinhibited, patchouli puts on a show. A game of contrast between the immediate freshness of the banks of the Seine and the intoxicating warmth of a woody note of patchouli, evoking the effervescence of Parisian nights and the elegance of a woody note, evoking the wood of fine theaters. Okay? I think they're reaching a little bit there, but okay. The fragrance artist touch. With Patchouli Paris, Delphine Jelk intended to capture the soul of the Parisian night, to recount its audacity, to reveal its fragrance. The Seine blushing and pulsating in a fresh, lively shiver of aldehydes and musk. If Patchouli Paris were a color, it would be the red glow of the artistic effervescence of Parisian nights. Delphine Jelk, Guerlain perfume creative director and perfumer. Hell of a name, hell of a title too. Creative director and perfumer. Interesting. So anyways, they say that Patchouli Paris expresses the vibrancy of streets ablaze on a festive evening in a trail of powdery woody iris. And that powdery woody iris is probably one of like maybe the separators here. It says Paris dizzy with music and freedom. Okay, so good and bad in this review. I'm really, really excited to dive into these. Really, really excited to dive into these Areej Dores. But let me know what you think about Patchouli Paris. If you have any experience with it, you know, sometimes, a lot of times, these new reviews when I'm reviewing a new fragrance go like this: some good, some bad. But anyways, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I appreciate everyone. We're almost at 11,000 subscribers, as I said. So once we hit 11,000, I have a very special Areej Dore video for you that I'm going to drop. So as always, cheers, guys. I love you. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.